Tim, holy cow. It's been a while. How are you?
I'm doing well, Renick. You?
Good. So listen, the last time we connected, we were going over this video about, the four different stages of the business life cycle.
Yeah,
And I had asked you, like, is there any other way that you could tell this story?
right.
And I'm wondering if you've given any thought to it.
I have. That's why you haven't heard from me, Renick, in a week. Because I locked myself up to write this story. I love the idea. I thought it was absolutely brilliant. And I have to tell you, I'm pretty excited about it. The
Good.
story I came up with, it's got adventure, intrigue, danger, just like any company looking to make it from startup to market leadership. So I can't tell you how excited I am to share it with you. And hopefully you'll understand some of the metaphors that we've included in here
Yeah.
between, a visionary explorer and his crew sailing to the new world, which is what
Right.
the story's about, and that of a founder taking his company from inception through each stage of the corporate life cycle.
Buddy, I'm all ears. Make it happen.
You ready to rock?
Let's go, man, dude. I'm ready.
So look, this is chapter 1.
Right.
It's called the vision stage of the corporate life cycle. Remember, we talked about the vision stage.
I do.
So it all begins. This is the story of Ferdinand. Now, Ferdinand is an aspiring explorer. He grew up in the southern Spain in the Bay of Cadiz, and he daydreamed about one day sailing his ship to the new world. So Renick, he grew up admiring local names like Vega and Florentine. Because of the hundreds who attempted this journey, these were the names of the select few who successfully navigated it. Most of the others had failed to even make it out of port. And even those who did, they fell victim to the high seas or dangerous pirates, which were known to roam the waters. So by the time Ferdinand reached his mid-20s, he had taken on a pretty stable lifestyle by day as a local blacksmith. Just like you and I, we reach our 20s and kind of that idealism gets thrown out of us. We take a regular job, get a regular paycheck. But in the evenings, he would sit in his rocking chair next to his warm fire and sketch different ship designs, which might someday withstand the ferocity of the open seas, as he heard about so vividly.
Right.
But during his lunch break, he'd steal away to the shipyards where he would share his vision and his sketches with a few of his friends who worked there. Now, you can imagine, Renick, his wife, Isabella, was less than impressed with his visions and daydreams.
I can understand that.
But she was worn down after years of pleading. I mean, ever since she met him when they were teenagers. And she also recognized the plight of her pushback.
Right.
But when he was 26 years of age, she finally relented to his lifelong dream and agreed to use much of their collective savings to finance construction of the ship and its voyage to the new world.
I like Isabella.
She's a wonderful woman. Now, recognizing her permission, Renick, as the blessing of his lifetime, he quickly began to inquire about town for the names of reputable shipwrights who could turn his vision and his sketches into a reality. And he was referred to a woman named Diego Montserrat. Now, Diego had previously made her fortune by overseeing the construction of a ship belonging to Vega Morales. If you remember, I mentioned him earlier.
Yeah.
And he was a renowned Spanish explorer who'd struck it rich in the New World and generously shared his treasures with her.
Right.
So she decided with her new wealth, she was going to comfortably live out her life on the Spanish coast, at least until the day Ferdinand came knocking on her door.
Right. Nice.
And now, Diego had been propositioned for similar projects in the past, but there was just something about Ferdinand's vision and his passionate plea that steered her intuition and opened her up to the slightest sliver of faith that he might just succeed.
Mm.
And it was a small opening, but it was just big enough for Ferdinand to explain his plan to sail to the New World and ultimately share his treasures with Diego. So I would say after a fair bit of negotiation, she accepted his offer. The two immediately began to collaborate on the design of the new ship.
Right.
And on her good advice, Ferdinand hired 3 ship hands to oversee the most important 3 components of the ship.
Okay.
Now, the first, as you can imagine, was a sound and strong wooden hull, which could withstand the high seas, the cannon fire from pirate vessels. And for this, he hired Jorge. Now, Jorge was a fisherman by trade,
right,
but he was also a skilled carpenter in his free time. And he was known, Renick, for beautiful woodworking skills.
Okay.
The second key component was a set of durable sails, which could withstand gale force winds over a sustained period at sea.
Right.
And so for this role, he hired Gabriella. Now, Gabriella, incidentally, worked in a bakery right around the corner from his blacksmith shop. But she was a renowned seamstress, and she was recognized all around town for sewing beautiful silk dresses.
I love it.
Lastly was the powerful system of armament. Now, you can imagine on the high seas, it can get pretty dangerous. You need to ward off attacking vessels, protect not only the vessel, but the crew and the supplies. So here he hired Jingo. Jingo owned a tavern in town, but he spent many months out of the year away on hunting trips. And he would experiment with firearms that he had custom built in his shop.
Nice.
So just like he did with Diego, Ferdinand designed similar incentive plans to share his wealth once he got to the New World with Jorge, Gabriella, and Jingo.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And over the next 9 months, they and their crew worked to build this ship based on the best laid plans of Diego and Ferdinand. And during construction, they'd open the ship up to their friends and their confidants in return for their feedback on the ship's design. And they'd ask them, was it worthy to tackle the ferocity of the high seas?
Right.
And you can imagine, they received quite a bit of feedback at this time. And
unsolicited.
Just like all of us who spent their whole lives dreaming about whatever product it might be, they found themselves defending a lot of times their original design.
Sure.
But at this, and they were also very conscious of the budgetary impact of making some changes mid-construction, because the time they'd spent up front on their design brought with it a great amount of confidence that they were well prepared for this dangerous journey.
No doubt.
So 1 month before launch, Diego, bless her soul, she presents Ferdinand with a framed painting of the ship. And at the bottom of the canvas, Renick, the 2 words, "Our Grace," were emblazoned to signify the collective accomplishments of the team.
I like that name, by the way.
It's a great name.
It's a great name, man.
And so from that day forward, Ferdinand proclaimed that the ship would be named Our Grace. So when the day of the launch finally arrived, the crew waved goodbye to their family and friends and set off from the protected waters towards the mouth of the bay, where it would soon open up to the unknown conditions of the raw ocean. Now, Ferdinand and the crew, Renick, were certainly very excited, but they were also a little anxious as they reached the open seas. So here's Our Grace turning its final corner onto the open seas. It was pretty clear they were now outside the protected waters of the Bay of Cadiz.
Right.
And the swells of the sea start smashing into Our Grace. And here you have Ferdinand. He's reflecting on some of that feedback he'd gotten along the way and wondered whether he was well prepared to weather what was between him and the New World.
Right.
So he peers back and locks eyes with Diego. And he feels the same mix of excitement and fear in her eyes as well. But without mustering a word, they reassured themselves just with their glare that they were up for the journey.
Love it.
But they also knew that well beyond the comforts of the harbor, that navigating the high seas meant dealing with some adversity and uncertainty head on.
Right.
And doing whatever it takes just to make it through each day as a ship and a unified crew. So that Renick's the vision stage of the corporate life cycle.
Got it.
And if you remember our prior video,
Yeah.
we talked about this stage being a time where We're inspired by new ideas, new possibilities. We're excited and wrapped up in the building of our product.
It's exhilarating, you know. I mean,
It's very
the
exciting.
vision of whatever you dreamed for so long coming to fruition, and you're watching it unfold, right?
Yeah. And of course, that product is informed by the best information we have at that time about what are the needs of the market.
Right.
And we begin to test the product. We open it up to, in somewhat of a controlled environment, to others to share their feedback.
Yeah.
But our vision at this stage is pretty strong. We've been working on this for months, if not years.
We're all in, man.
We're all in. And we may or may not be that open to all the feedback we get.
Right.
And some of that may be driven by a little bit of pride and ego, and some of that may be driven by budgetary constraints, as it was the case in Our Grace.
Right.
Oftentimes we'll make changes. I mean, this is the time to get feedback and tinker with the product and make some adjustments before launching full steam.
Yep.
But we probably don't make all of the changes we should have. And as we'll find out in the next chapter, that's when we start realizing, hey, we weren't quite prepared for what the market is going to throw at us.
Well, the reality is too, is that you don't have an open checkbook. You know what I mean? Like you gotta put, you know, your effort into the areas that you think you need the most budget and go after it and jump. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So listen, I'm gassed up for the next opportunity. We're coming around the bay. Let's go.
So in the next stage of our journey, that's going to be the opportunistic stage.
Opportunistic.
And we'll begin to realize, Renick, that the market doesn't always respond the way we anticipate.
They're not very friendly. Is that what you're trying to tell me?
And let's remember, we're no longer in the comforts of the Bay of Cadiz, right?
It's no longer a controlled environment.
Yeah. So without the luxury of the shipyards, we're going to find ourselves a little bit in survival mode, doing everything we can to adapt to the rough market. And we're going to have to make some changes on the fly and find out who's really in for the journey. So stay tuned for chapter 2.
I'm staying tuned.